see him, Dr. Cole? Okay, good. So he's the founder and principal of Herbal Synergy, a food and drug consulting company. And he was a food and drug research scientist at the California Department of Health Services Food and Drug Branch for 16 years. In his government role, he was actively involved in regulating dietary supplements and investigating herbal products related injury and death. His expertise includes current food manufacturing, good manufacturing practices, regulation in drugs and dietary supplements, validation issues, auditing, quality control, import and export of drugs and herbal products, labeling, clinical trials, human subject protection, and evaluation of pharmacology and toxicology of drugs and dietary supplements. And please welcome Dr. Cole.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation to be here. I'm going to try to make it relatively quick since we're right at 6 o'clock right now. I don't have 3 slides, and I just want to cover a little bit about what's being regulated both in China as well as what we are doing in the United States. So in China, they have the counterpart of our FDA is called CFDA. Used to be called SFDA, but now it's called China FDA. Basically, they do the same thing, but I think as previous speaker already mentioned that in China they actually regulate herbal product as a drug product, as a pharmaceutical. Actually, that's a good thing because that means that the manufacturer has to adhere to the drug GMP, which is a lot more stringent than the food GMP. And so that's one safeguard in regarding to the products that are being exported all over the world. In the U.S., I think about 80 or 90% of our herbal products are imported. Majority are from China, India. Those are the 2 main countries that we see a lot of herbal products coming in. In addition, for China, whenever the herbal products are being exported, it has to be tested by a called General Administration of Quality Supervision Inspection, according to PRC, AQSIQ. That's a regulatory requirements that all herbal products, I think I'm using that, that all herbal product has to be tested before they are exported to another country, and they must be tested according to the each country's specific requirements. So there is additional safeguard in addition to the good manufacturing practices that they need to adhere to, as well as the testing that before they are exported as a drug products. Next slide. We see a lot of adverse effects from herbal products, and at the very beginning of my career, we see a lot of what we call extrinsic factors. And that usually is related to adulterations, meaning that they are being added pharmaceutical products, contaminants, toxic ingredients in there without being labeled clearly on the package insert or on the label itself. We also see misidentification in some of the herbs that are being used. So there's a wide variety of problems initially. Nowadays, we see a lot less of those problems. Often you still see it, I think the cases of the aconite poisoning that was reported a few months ago possibly can be due to some of the extrinsic factors in here. Then we talk about intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor is mainly basically talking about toxic herbs. Toxic herbs, we usually think about, it can be like really toxic. Aconite is mentioned frequently. But there may be other herbs that are relatively, you would think that's relatively safe, but may not be, depending on the patient that are using it. One good example would be the green tea extract. I'm not talking about regular green tea, but we are talking about green tea extract that are being used in a lot of the dietary supplement products for weight loss purposes. We have seen liver failure associated with the green tea extract to the point where there's in Europe there is a warning out for all the dietaries, for all the products that contain green tea extract to be cautioned about liver failure. We are in the process in the U.S. to identify if the green tea extract is actually due to the green tea itself, or is it a pharmacokinetic, toxicokinetics problem, or is it because there may be contaminants during manufacturing? My last slide, please. So I also is part of the U.S. Pharmacopoeia expert committee on dietary supplement or botanical products. At USP, we developed a series of steps that we evaluate herbal products to see if they can be admitted to the pharmacopoeia as a monograph. And so very quickly, I just go through it very quickly. We look at all the human data in clinical trial that associate with that particular herbal product. We also look at any adverse events that are reported by different regulatory agency. We scan through the literature extensively just to see if we see any single adverse reaction report or reported from the clinical trials. We also look at non-human data, including obviously animal studies, but one of the things that we start to put a little bit more emphasis on it is to looking at the QSAR, which is the quantitative structural activity relationship. Basically, for some of the lay person that not quite sure what it is, we compare some of the known toxic ingredients, their molecular structure. For example, like acetaminophen, which is Tylenol. We know that it can be potentially liver toxic, and we know the structure quite well on the acetaminophen. So we compare some of the herbal products, their ingredients that we can identify, and see how similar their molecular structure is to, for example, in this case, acetaminophen, and a wide variety of other compounds that we know is known toxin. We compare the molecular structure and give a probability of if this particular herbs that contain particular type of ingredients and the molecular structure, would it cause any particular adverse reaction that we will see in the known toxic ingredients. So those are the newer things that we are doing that we find that it can be very helpful for us to evaluate if our herbs can be potentially toxic. And lastly, of course, we look at some of the historical use, whether there's a long history of use, or is it creating a very new type of supplements or new type of herbs. Not all herbs have thousands of years of usage. Keep in mind that TCM is just like Western medicine. We are continuously doing research on it. There's always new herbs coming out. There are also herbs that are phasing out because of their toxicity. So we do look at those things, and we also look at the regulatory status because some of the country may already approve certain herbs, and therefore we will look at that and see if it comply with what our requirement is. Thank you.